special, I think, in sixth grade this year. I think it's really important for the psyche that the kids have. And I didn't understand why it was fourth and fifth and sixth grade, because these were exceptionally bright kids, and I think they should have been allowed to have their own sixth grade. I think all sixth graders, not just this past year, should have their own sixth grade. It's really good for their mental attitude and development and growth to be special. This is the last year in that school. It's almost like a senior in high school, or an eighth grader before they get into, when they start all over again, being Romeo and Cole. At least this 1 year they have a chance to be somebody. That's the separate sixth grade should be. And that was my opinion. Yeah.
I guess my sense is the developmental disparity between a fourth grader and a sixth grader can be pretty vast. I mean, you have those areas where they are closer, but certainly socially, emotionally, maybe not academically, they're pretty different. And so maybe in selective activities it might work, but as a whole, I think it seems pretty difficult to put that together. And I feel like we've done this a lot of times. I mean, I've been around here a long time, and we've done the four. Andy, you're laughing. We've done
almost as long as you.
We've done the 4, 5, 6 thing, and then we stopped doing it, and now we're doing it again. And I don't know that it's ever worked really well. I guess that's my experience.
I believe in occasionally it works well, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week, but the separation in the long run, I think it would be better, keep them separated.
Somebody's got another comment rolling around in their head. I'm going to share.
I have just a question. We've been invited by Bartlett to send our sixth graders over there. How do you feel about sixth graders spending time with older kids? Any thoughts on that?
I thought again was, I think they should have their own school here and be the top dog rather than going from fifth grade to sixth grade over there. Then they don't have the ability to be somebody special before they head over there. I think it's necessary. It's always been this way as far as 40-some years ago, and I think that's the way it should stay.
I would prefer to see them stay here in a sixth grade that's really geared towards their academic and social needs, rather than see them mixed up in Bartlett. And like she said, be at the low end of the middle school totem pole. But I feel strongly that I didn't like what happened this year in terms of the mix and the 5th, 6th together. I kind of struggled with that. So I would have preferred about the middle of the year to have had him at Bartlett than be in this kind of sort of mixture. So, but my preference is to see the 6th grade have their own class.
I think having the 6th grade in Jackson is also a benefit to the 4th and 5th graders, to have those kids in their activities in recess or whatever they participate together at, that it just seems to be more cohesive to those kids to have them here is to see them go away. I think that cohesiveness of Jackson, if you will, is important to the kids. Less academically than sports or activities outside of class.
also, the kids from Jackson play all kinds of sports with Bartlett. They know the Bartlett kids. So it's not like they don't know who they are, but it's still special from here, I think, to have 6th grade here.
Anyone else? Agnes, did you want to contribute any? Or?
I think the hard part for me is we sat here this time of year last year asking for it to be different and special, and it's been a disappointment that that despite that input this time last year, I think I certainly feel that we didn't achieve the school system didn't achieve it, and there were surveys put out, there were a lot of requests, there was talk about, you know, 6th grade trips, there was talk about a project, there was talk about, you know, different things that didn't come to pass. And when we met in the fall, it was, again, kind of, I think it was disappointing to have met like this, then met with the staff, and to be coming around a year later and feeling like we're right where we started. And I think we missed a big opportunity, and I'd say that if I were the staff, I would be concerned. You're going to lose a class, you lose a teacher. I don't think you can do that again. I don't think that was a quality. Yes, if you go to Bartlett, you're low manning a total pole, but the expectations are very high, and it would certainly be a growth experience. The idea would be to be here and have the bar raised for the 6th grade. And I think it's great that the 6th grade is going to be by itself next year. It's really disappointing that it wasn't this year. I think that's to some degree a failure of leadership. I think all intentions are great, and when everything gets thrown into the mix of you know, all these different priorities, raising the bar for 6th grade is a critical one. And I would, if there isn't a clear raising the bar by the staff for the 6th grade, not just by being by themselves, but invigorating that curriculum for the 6th grade, individualizing it, all the pieces that we talked about when we met and had high hopes for, I would vote to send it to Bartlett. But it's a huge opportunity missed not to do it here. So I could not go back if I stood up in a town meeting and there's a big debate about this. I think the school has had many opportunities over the last 5 or 6 years to meet that challenge, to raise the bar. And although the quality of teaching, the environment is wonderful, it's a great social experience, it could be more. And I don't think it's just the teacher's responsibility to make it more. I think that's a school, I mean, the teacher has a lot to do, and I think it takes a coordinated effort. And that's...
Thanks, Agnes.
Can I switch subjects a little bit, or?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. After school activities, I think that most of the parents would like to see some more after school activities. You know, I know the police department a few years ago, they did a kickball thing after school. That was great. Just some more varied activities after school. I know the kids, they always look forward to it. They love it. They love all these after-school activities whenever we do them. So if we can do more of them and keep them varied, that would be great. I don't know if we should approach the police department about doing that again next year, or we just do it on our own or something. But those types of activities, I think that makes the community a lot better.
And for the children who aren't athletes, because we have children that are not soccer players, aren't loving cross country, and they're kind of getting where all the other kids are going to soccer. And what do we have for these children who are not loving soccer? They should have something to be excited about after school too.
Let's go for that. Scott, did you have something to say?
Got so kind of politely back there, looks like he wanted to say something, but I don't know.
I think he was gonna say that.
I just want to just clarify, I'm disappointed in the way the process went. I think that it's still a wonderful experience. I think that sixth grade is, I think, speaking from the community, I think that the school has to see, to some extent, kindergarten and sixth grade is really, or that entry and exit years is being different, as being something more. And I think, when it's all thrown into the mix of the multiple priorities of the school, I can see how, you gotta make choices, and there may be a burning need at fourth grade or fifth grade or something like that makes you steal from, especially you think, these kids in sixth grade got it going on. They don't need, they don't need it. There's not a need there. They can do well on their own. I think the community is saying sixth grade it needs to be resourced in a way that it is protected a little bit from those. That doesn't mean you don't take care of the rest of the needs. I think sixth grade needs those resources to make it special. And I do understand how that can be a, borrow from Peter to pay Paul situation at some point, but whatever it takes to do that, I think would be worthwhile.
Just as a technicality, I'm going to call our regular school board meeting to order. We'll continue with the listening post stuff. So,
Mrs. Groves had.
Mrs. Groves.
I'm not speaking to anything in the past, but I do think it's important to be cognizant of the fact that in coming years we have very variable numbers in our different classes. And so you've got 8 children in the class, and then 3 children in the class, and then 10 kids, and then 1 child. And so the school population is sort of, I think it's important to be cognizant of the fact that if we are always talking about this super special 6th grade, which I agree 6th graders need to be pushed ahead, and I agree with everything that's been said. However, when you get the class of 3 into 6th grade, are we setting them up for a disappointing year because we're talking about the 6th grade and everything they should be doing on their own, because all of a sudden you have a very small group of children that are going to be participating in really fabulous activities without a large enough peer group. As opposed to the way we have been doing things. I just want people to be cognizant of the fact that by framing something in a certain way, that may be challenging down the line.
I think I'd actually like to state something as a parent and a board member, actually, that might tie some of these things together, I guess. As both a parent and a board member, there's 2 things that disappointed me about the configurations last year. They were never explained to me in a way that actually made sense. And I think that's something that, as a school community, we need to do better. We need to have a better dialogue about why the configurations are the way that they are, so that we understand as a parent and as a board member that this is the way they're going to be. Because I think everyone's actually pretty much on the same page here. We're not really too far apart on most things, and most of what our ideas are. It just might take a little bit more transparency, a better dialogue about what we're doing and why. We do change configurations a lot in the school, and there's years where I just haven't understood why they were done that way. Even sitting here listening to, when administration comes to us and says, this is what the configuration is going to be for next year, there isn't, most of the time they make sense. Last year's didn't. And I think that's what's difficult as a parent of this year's 6th grade group, is that we were told things, a reason that didn't make a lot of sense. I think that what I'd like to see as a parent and as a board member is that when we have the dialogue about configurations and about curriculum, how that ties into that, that maybe we sit down and have a longer conversation about it, that we have a meeting where we do this, and everyone maybe doesn't leave with what they want, but might leave with a better understanding of why it's going to be that way. And as a board member, we've heard, and a parent, we've heard lots of different reasons on why the configurations are the way they are. Some years it's social, some years it's behavior, some years it's academics of different students. I think there needs to be a more consistent message coming to us and we clarify what our expectations are.
That's the question. Maybe it's for Kristen, follow-up, and Joan. Maybe what I'm saying is that if it's a mission of the school, or it's part of the way we frame the school, that it's creating this prioritization for the experience in 6th grade. Now, how that ends up looking, right? To me, it's an emphasis, a degree of emphasis, and so if I were budgeting and looking at, if that was set, that's one of the things that has to be checked, is this prioritization, and there's all these line items below that, what that means. Some years that might be integration with 6th grade in Bartlett. Some years that might be, because there's maybe one girl and 6 boys, and that's going to be a different thing. And does it help from a community standpoint to, because if that's set out there as a goal, then that does have implications in terms of resources. Right now, if you put one teacher with 3 kids, that would seem excessive, unless that were set out as a priority. And I don't know, I guess what we're looking for, is there a way to frame this conversation in a way that doesn't seem conflicted, but is, if it is the desire of the community to put a priority on 6th grade, that experience, in order to keep it here, that's kind of one of the goals. How to do that? What's the way that makes that work from a structure, budgeting, staffing, and the variable things that come up with our class? Is there a way to do that that's helpful? If the community wants that, how to do that in a way that's functional and workable and going forward?
If I could just throw in here as well, one of the reasons we sometimes are not as forthcoming with reasons is there's a confidentiality piece to student needs, relationships, families, relationships with teachers and students. There's a whole host of issues that I won't be discussing with the board or the public that play into our conversations as staff when we're making a recommendation about configurations. We're trying to look at, as much as we can, what's good for every single child. You can't always protect every single child, but we make a heroic effort in trying to do that. So, and as I said, I think we followed the same process every year, and I explained it to the board earlier, how we figured it out, but it's a bit of a dance, because it's almost always, if we do what's good for Johnny, it's probably not as great for Susie, and, so we just try to juggle it, and that's why I can't always be forthcoming about exactly why we decided on a 4-5 or a 5-6 or why we mix kids from 4-5-6. Our classes are small. It's healthy for kids to learn how to work together. And they're going up to a school where they're in bigger classes, and then in high school, bigger classes still. So to have 3 youngsters feel like they can have free reign, they need some experience in working with kids of all different abilities, all different grade levels. So a lot of that is what plays into our decision-making as well. We have heard this is what you're asking for, and we are taking steps in that direction. However, we can't guarantee that every year the best thing for the most number of children will be a standalone 6th grade.
So can I just ask you to clarify, it's been laid out that there'll be a standalone 6th grade, at least at this point, for the next 3 years? Is that what?
Next year.
Oh, just next year, okay. So
And it looks potentially like it could work the following year. However, I've said that, but I still retain the, and the staff will want to retain the ability with kids moving in, kids moving out, things changing, to change that up if we need to. But we have definitely heard from the community and the board that all things being equal, and it's good for kids, good enough for kids, that we can feel like it's a good decision, we'll go ahead and maintain the standalone sixth grade.
But that sounds nebulous, that all things being
It
equal. I
is,
think that's what
yes.
we're talking about, is that all things should not be equal. I
Yeah.
think that's the issue, is that that's a tyranny of the minority, potentially. It's, that there are some issues, I understand, there are some needs, but behind the if the community wants it a certain way, and if behind the scenes, the staff, you decide that we're going to do it this way for an undisclosed reason, that's politically not sustainable. You're going to lose the class. You're going to, and that idea of, well, we have a high need here, and so it's acceptable to detract from a majority of kids. Instead of resourcing that need, you come to this conclusion. I think that transparency of how you're making decisions, what are your key priorities, checking those boxes, and then asking the town or whatever to resource, because of extenuating circumstances. I think that's kind of the wording you gave last year. There may be valid reasons, but it did detract from our perspective, and it sounds like it needs more either transparency or more structure to that decision-making process.
I mean, is it possible to come up with a rubric? Like, this is how we decide? I mean, you don't have to give specifics, but can there at least be like...
I'd be happy to give you the checklist that we use. We do have one.
I'd like to expand on Agnes's point to the resources. That it would seem to me that if a proper plan were given to the community, and it was, let's just say, 3 kids in 6th grade, but that a plan that might require more resources to give the 6th grade a special experience or a fuller experience as a 6th grader. And I think that if the community was explained what resources were necessary to do that, I believe the community would support that. I've never gotten a sense at school annual meetings that there was any sense to detract from the school in any way. It was always what can we do to make the school a better experience for everyone? And I think that if and again, this expands on Agnes's point about resources, that if it takes more resources to do something that the community supports, I think the community would support it.
For example, Bartlett is resourcing its 6th grade by turning it into a multi-classroom middle school. It's an example of adding resources to a grade to raise it's if you Joan, if
I'm sorry, Angus. The reason that they're doing that is to save staff, not to do anything special for the 6th grade. But that's a Bartlett issue, and this is not about the
but the issue is going to be
configuration.
The issue for this town is going to be very clearly soon, do we keep 6th grade or not? And if the community feels that it's a better educational opportunity to go to 6th grade, the community is going to vote that way. You can't escape that possibility. You're going to have to make an argument that it's a better educational experience to stay where we are. And you're going to need parents who agree in retrospect that this was the best option available.
Not to throw this totally out of whack with Our school is really important to bring young people into the community, to keep our community flowing. If you have a really exceptional school, kindergarten through sixth grade, you will have young people coming into town because of the school system. And I know, being on the planning board, it's a big thing going on now, not only in here in Jackson, but all across the country. How do you bring affordable housing into town? What draws them here? It's that school, more than anything else. And you start chipping away at our school and our exceptionalism that we have in that school, it's going to chip away at your community as well. Just throw that in to people. Think about it.
Is there any more comments from anyone? Let's try to wrap this up then. I will go back and say, I think that as a community, we really are close to being on the same page. And it really does come down to transparency and being able to communicate what's going on. And I think something that the school has to be very wary of is what Angus had just said, which is if the parents don't have the buy-in to it, then it's going to be a continued problem. And it probably doesn't really need to be. If we have the right kind of discussions, we can avoid some of that tension and misunderstanding. But I can say, as a parent and as a board, how the school approaches the idea of configuration, K through 6, it needs to be more transparent and more understanding to us as a board and as parents, because it isn't right now. And the school might be doing the exact right thing it should be. But if we don't believe that and we don't understand why that is, then it's a problem for the school community. And I think that we're going to try to work on over the next few months and how to rectify that so that we do this better. So I do thank everyone for coming to the listening post for this. We'll have continued discussions about these type of things. Probably our next listening post will be in the fall. Maybe hopefully September we can do it. And then I think it will be about middle school and high school probably combined into one, just to get feedback from parents and community members about that.
If I could make a request before folks leave, I would like Vicki Garland to be able to present her information on how our Jackson students do up at Kennett High School, if that's acceptable.
Because there's names on here, I'm not sharing it with the audience. What I'd like to say is that staff, what you're doing, don't stop. You are doing an excellent job helping your kids be successful in Bartlett and beyond. And I can give you a couple examples here. I think the most telling one is that this year, 88.9% of Jackson students made the honor roll at least once. In the first quarter, let's see, let me do it this way. Jackson represents 3.65% of the high school students, so it's a very small group of kids. So remember that number, 3.65%. Seniors getting high honors Jackson students took 17.65% of all the seniors getting high honors. You are overrepresented in all the good ways. Let me find you another one. Second quarter, freshman high honors, first and second quarter, and then third. First quarter, high honors freshmen, 24% of all the kids earning high honors came out of Jackson. Second quarter, 20%. Third quarter honor roll, and I don't have fourth quarter numbers yet, 32% of all the students getting high honors came out of Jackson. So that whatever your community decides, I want you to know you're coming from a solid place of academic success for your kids. So I can certainly understand why a community wants to stay involved and pay attention to what's going on, but I am telling you, you are operating from a base that is solid and helps your kids be very successful when they get to Bartlett, and they fly when they get to the high school. I don't hold me on the exact numbers here because you've got kids who move in and out of the district, so I don't always get information about kids. If they didn't go to Jackson or Bartlett, if they don't live in Jackson or Bartlett, I can't get information about them because of FERPA laws. So that I try to include as much as I possibly can in what I know. So the numbers, the statistics might not be accurate to the number, but I think they really reflect a beautiful snapshot of what starts right here in kindergarten, holding your kids to very high standards and expectations, and it follows them right through to the day of graduation. So I commend this school immensely, and the administration and the board that guides it. From my point of view, you guys rock.
Thanks, Vicki, thanks for doing that.
Scott?
It's been 45 minutes, I have to say something. I would just like to, that says it all, and this says it all. You guys are awesome. Having this conversation is probably the best half hour I've ever seen as far as informational stuff on a school board, no matter what you do or how you do it. Look what comes out of here, look where it comes to Bart, look where it goes to Kennett. It's all about parental involvement, it's about staff and principals and the school board, so I just wanted to applaud it, that's all.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll see if I can keep quiet for another half hour.
Philosophically, I don't believe that children need to hear more frequently how super special they are. I think kids need to hear that they're not that special, they're one of many, and can we work toward the common good, but that's just my opinion. Telling children too frequently how special they are sometimes is not in their best interest. Their parents should feel like they are the most special. I agree with that as a parent. That's how I felt about my kids. But looking at the big picture, sometimes that message can backfire.
Great.
I know we're trying to wrap up, but I feel like I need to say that in the long run, being able to work within a group of diverse people who aren't necessarily where you are in life, I think is one of the skills that help you to be successful as an adult. And even if that's frustrating, it is a very necessary skill for success. And so when our students are with kids of different ages and learning to work with those people, still be independent, still be successful, still drive themselves forward, it may feel very frustrating. And it may be difficult at the time, but I think we are teaching. No, we're not teaching. We are providing an environment where they are able to practice an essential lifelong skill. And so I do think that that's a special piece to multi-age.
Thanks, Kristen.
Here's a question for Vicki. Vicki, to what degree are you involved with kids as they look for career planning, college planning, kind of transition out of high school?
I don't believe I'm very involved in that at all, and the reason is that I think the school counseling office at the high school does a really good job of that. I work more with the kids who don't necessarily have plans, helping them come up with a plan, but for kids whose families support them in that quest, I feel like they already are getting what they need, and I try really hard to never duplicate a service that's being provided by the high school.
I will reflect back that we have had wonderful guidance in that department, but they are woefully undermanned. So they may be great people and their intentions are wonderful, but one guidance person per 200 kids results in minimal. I mean, they can only do so much, and they've got a lot of kind of fires burning.
I mean, so what?
If it's something that there could be discussions about, augmenting what is felt universally to be kind of one of the most undermanned parts of the high school is the guidance department. Not because of skill, just.
Right, I agree with you. Sorry, go ahead.
Because that's something through the Bartlett-Jackson discussion, there could be discussions about looking at that part, not just the transition into school, but transition out of school.
Absolutely, if that's what you guys want. To be honest, I don't believe I have the skill set to provide that. I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough, but I do know that parents who are involved and contact that school counseling office, their kids might get a little bit more attention because of parental involvement. And I'm also aware there are parents who hire private counselors for getting into college, so that parents who have resources could add that on to ensure that their kids get into the best school they're most qualified for. I have no experience other than my own children
It
with
could be
that.
as simple as most parents coming in, their first child in high school don't know what they don't know. So they wouldn't know to ask that, they wouldn't know to be proactive that way, they wouldn't know that there were even other resources out there.
Something I've seen over time, because I've been around way too long, is that with the administrator in the school counseling office, she's initiated over the years and does a really excellent job of introducing ninth graders to the conversation of college, and bringing colleges in and going on tours in ninth grade. So it's a change I've seen over time with that office. I see more and more of that happening. I've also seen more and more of the career tech department helping kids who don't have plans of going on to a 2 or 4 year college become very skilled and being able to leave high school and earn a very healthy living wage through what they learn in career tech.
Vicki, thanks for your comments there. And before then, we're getting kind of off track, we should get into our regular meeting. I do thank people for coming and listening post information. We'll hopefully be doing this again in September. We would do it in July and August, but getting people here is tough. So I know it's tough coming here this time of year, so thanks for coming. We're going to get into our regular meeting. Yeah, that's what's in our first order of business, I think. Andy, thank you for putting all the interest for volunteering. With that being said, I'd entertain a motion to this meeting report. All those in favor?
Keith and I. Oh, everyone. Okay.
Whatever you want.
Can only stay away so long.
We have more seats if you guys want to come sit down. You don't have to, but no sittings and smoking.
Tiffany has four agendas.
Yeah, right on the corner.
For second, this is to approve the minutes from May 15th. Motion to do so.
Motion.
Any comments or changes to that? All those in favor? Abstain? Brings us to citizen comments. Is there any at this point? Hearing none, we'll move on. Presentation of school F1.
Yeah.
What
happened?
Right
Okay. First, come back.
Nobody's gonna comment?
Come on, Scott, you got anything?
She does have, I think, quite a few things under her principal's report.
It's probably nothing under FYI items. If there is, we can come back to it, or she can come to that. Old business preschool next steps.
I actually can comment on that.
Sure.
I think Pam Simpson gave me some information through, I think it's the lawyer for the SAU. He had an intern who did some research on transportation issues. So she gave me the memo from the intern, and it should prove helpful when we are looking at whatever information Gail comes back with. So I don't think we need to go over it right now, but when and if Gail comes back from the church to give any site information, then we have this. And Pam said she's happy to come and talk about it too, but it's well done, so. But we have, if anyone wants a copy, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just hold it until we need it.
Gail, we jumped over FYI items into old business and are on preschool next steps. And then so, if you had anything under FYI, you can go back to it if you want us at any point. But
good.
Any more updates on the preschool at this point? Pavilion update?
Can I just pause for a second?
Yeah.
So what is the timeline for the preschool information to come back, and is it left in the sea of swimming or what's?
The church board needed to get together and vote, and then Gail was going to let me know when they had voted.
You know when they vote?
It was after this meeting, wasn't it, next week? Or
The next council meeting of the church is this Wednesday.
So, just an
Yeah,
update.
fill me in.
The timeline-wise, there's nothing we can do until the next budgeting schedule. We don't need to have a definitive answer for us to vote on until the next budgeting schedule. So we're in a similar position as we were in last year, in that we're waiting for some information. At our last meeting, Gail said that she would be bringing it back to us, hopefully in September.
Right.
And then, at that point, we're kind of going to go back to the plan we had, look at that, present it back to the public. And I think Keith said it last meeting, or Jerry, someone said it. It would be a similar process where we look at it, if there's more information we need. Hopefully we won't at that time, but you'd be looking to
So I guess
get it done by
specifically,
the budget schedule.
the only thing we're considering for a space at this point in time is the church. We're not actively seeking other spaces, so it's the church at this point. So in that process, it would be, once that becomes a known entity, then the school board would have to consider the church and preschool. Last year, we weren't on the same page with it, and we didn't have strong support from the school board to do it. So we'd have to probably pretty much look at the whole thing again to see if we're going to present it to the community. And I think that, we had a little bit more of the details under wraps, and the school board was all for it. Then I think that's when we would go back to the community to engage them in a public hearing on it before we start the budget process on it. So hopefully by October, we can have those ducks in a row and move forward with it. But I think that to be specific about it, yes, we're only considering the church as a space at this point in time. So if that doesn't work out, we're pretty much in limbo still with it. So I think at this point, we're trying to clarify the details on that. If that becomes a known quantity, then we'll try to iron out all the other details, and then I think we'll consider it as a school board as a whole, whether we want to do it or not, and if we do, then we would do a public hearing. That's where we're at on that. Pavilion update, Joan, I can address it.
You got my email, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably by September, hopefully I'll respond to it.
That's why I sent it to him.
I was going to reply to the engineer
Yeah.
to give him my contact information anyway. The pavilion is trudging through the hallways of bureaucracy, which is pretty much always what's going to happen with this. Because of the pavilion size, it needed to have a place of assembly permit. And because it needed that, it needed architectural approval, a stamp from an architect. A local architect graciously donated that, but he needed a stamp from an engineer to do the stamp for the architect. Currently, it's going through the engineer's approval process. Once that process has completed, they'll send it to me, and I'll be able to sign off on it. And we'll move forward to getting the building permit for it and the process underway for that. And I think, John, you said that a lot of the wood's actually already available.
Yeah, the wood, we just brought it down this morning from my house, and John Stokey and I brought it down with the help of Mike Wieters and Lowell. We stacked it out there in the back, so there are a lot of big timbers out there underneath the tarp. I'll take a look at it at some point.
I think John and Joan are all ready to go and have some pretty good ideas on how to move the project forward, so that's actually looking pretty exciting from that standpoint.
John, let's not leave Stokey out of this.
What's the timeline on that, and is that still going to be a project for the kids?
Absolutely. So we can't move forward until we have the signed building permit, so that's just where Jerry said, but as soon as we get that, pending that, there's no reason why the building inspector shouldn't approve it once we get those engineers' numbers. Stokey talked to the guys at the town about digging us some holes. and then get some concrete in there, cut the frame
Yep.
this fall.
That's why we brought it down here, so that the community could see the project happening and get involved in any, whatever capacity they want to get involved in. So wanted it to be very apparent that something was happening so that people could
Kids have been,
put into their, use their strengths and see if, or want to learn something from that kind of construction.
kids will continue to be, obviously, to be involved in all of the phases. So, once we're out of this design phase and then into the construction phase, kids will be involved in, contacting and talking to professionals who are going to help us dig and cement and all of that kind of stuff. They'll be able to, they'll see the construction techniques, that they'll watch John measure 4 times and cut once.
And use some of the tools.
And they'll see, so they'll have some experience and some knowledge of the tools and construction techniques, as well as history. And
We consulted with, I don't know if you know Curtis Milton, who is like a timber framing guru, but he has also organized a lot of community-based projects, and so we've been already in contact with him, consulting about like how to, like some avenues to explore with children and education to be able to bring more opportunities. to them.
yeah.
And as a point of interest, Curtis Milton is the gentleman who helped us take down the Tricky Barn.
Right.
And was
Right.
heavily involved in resurrecting it again as our current library.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he,
we
and
worked with him quite a bit, so he's offered to help in any way he can.
in a lot of different ways. And when one suggestion he had was kind of a cool thing we hadn't thought of is, that, we talked about a lot of different historical perspectives and things kids can get into and things can learn about historically, but we even talked about with him, not just the historic construction techniques, but the historic ways to seal the wood. And, looking at natural mixtures and that kind of stuff. So, so we've started talking about where that fits in with, where we're moving all of those little pieces and parts in all of the different phases.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Moving on, instructional issues. Is there any at this point? Kind of at the end of the year, so there would be, but, consider personnel actions. First up, consider entertaining motion to approve the salary for Gail Dembowski, teaching principal. It doesn't matter, the amounts aren't on here, we don't have to state that, do we, Kevin? Or in the motion, it's just.
No, it's public record,
All those in favor? Entertain a motion to consider approval for Kathleen Scollin as lead counselor for summer program.
Second.
Motion.
Any discussion, questions?
Andy and I are gonna take it soon.
Just to keep Melissa on the toes over there.
So how did you got this through higher ed jobs, these 2 candidates?
No, it came through our SAU 9 recruit and hire,
Oh, okay.
which we use for hiring all of our staff.
Which is broadcast out
It just goes to a bunch of places, yeah.
ed jobs.
One was me. Well, she comes with a lot of educational background and
Yeah, that's great.
All those in favor? Entertain a motion to elect Nicole Mappy as counselor for the summer program. Discussion, all those in favor? Entertain a motion to elect Caitlin Parnell as counselor for the summer program.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, questions? All those in favor? Entertain a motion to elect Nicole Nappy as ESY staff.
Motion.
Second.
It's really confusing. Discussions and questions? All those in favor? Brings us down to business affairs, budget status report.
No, you still have.
I'm gonna go one more.
And then
Did I skip somebody?
Yeah, that's,
The approval of some.
Oh,
there's a G as well.
there's a G. There's a G.
I don't have a G. With this
I
one.
brought it inside the
Oh,
resignation.
yeah. We're not gonna do G. G is too many on the agenda. It's not gonna work, sorry.
That's you last time.
You can try to get out of working here next year.
I already signed his contract, so. Sorry.
Yes.
No.
No.
I'm gonna write that.
G.
That's right.
Consider approval of the summer curriculum work.
So
Second.
Discussion, questions?
Can you just explain this a little bit? What does this mean?
Sure. As you know, every summer, there are a number of committees across the SAU that meet and do the curriculum work, curriculum updates. So that Joan will be participating with the Science Committee. The unit development would be, as we're moving forward with the personalized learning and the integrated units, those are hours that the faculty can work together to develop new units, look for new resources, collaborate together about what they're going to be adding to their curriculum for next year. And we are also going to be participating in a forum on the 14th and 15th of August for PACE with the other educators around the state to be looking at implementing the competency-based education piece. So,
Is that forum, are all of our teachers attending that PACE forum, or is it just you?
we're all invited to. I haven't confirmed it with everyone yet, but it looks like most of us are going to be able to go.
That's great.
All those in favor? Unanimous. That brings us to G.
G.
Oh, I do have G. All right, then. Entertain a motion to accept with regret the resignation of Stephen Cooney as 20% physical education teacher. So there was no motion, no second. So.
Mine. I got it.
You got it?
I got it, yes.
So that's been advertised?
Not yet. No, it's not accepted his resignation, so. He is now the full-time physical education teacher at the John Fuller Schools.
The recommend.
The recommended.
Be official.
Well, I do wish him luck and all the best. And
Yeah.
We all do.
whatever he's.
Is he still commuting from Waterville Valley?
He was,
chances
twice a week.
of finding somebody?
We'll advertise
Do you know
and we'll see.
From talking to town, is there a 20% PE teacher around?
I tried to work it out so that we could share him, but it didn't quite work out either. So. They're just too physical over there.
Is that something where you could use the resources we've got and have someone coordinating them, like do swimming at the White Mountain Aquatic Center one day a week or something, or once a month, or whatever it would be? Or do you have to have someone in-house doing that? You know what I mean? Or
Well,
like-
we do need a certified PE teacher,
Okay,
And there is a curriculum.
and we have a
that
curriculum.
Oh, okay.
State standards for
standards.
that.
but so you couldn't tie in what other people are doing, like using the other things that are in the community?
Good, but you have to follow the curriculum with a license.
We'd have to match it.
You'd need to coordinate, yeah, it'd be tough to piecemeal it together.
I'm just wondering, because we have so many resources, can you hit those curriculum pieces with other people if you have someone supervising? It's just a question, right? Check. That's the job I wanted.
All those in favor?
We have an opening for a physical ed teacher.
So we have a motion.
Next available position.
It's perfect time.
Gosh, that would be fun.
Budget status, we looking like, so we have about $32,000.
26? When all the bills are coming in, yeah, I would say somewhere around 30.
$40,000.
I guess because it's kind of related. The money for the check from the class action lawsuit on the siding on the building, do we need to get a contract in place for siding replacement to retain those funds, or do we need to do some sort of
I'll check on that. I don't believe
budget
so,
magic with?
but because did that go back up? Let me check on that to see if, did that go back into the local district?
That money was
Yeah.
a check to the Jackson Grammar School District,
Okay.
so it'll just go into our
General fund.
general
General
fund is
fund. Put it to
unanticipated
account for it in a
revenue.
month.
So it'll get closed out with our budget this year, which is okay if we kind of backdoor it, working with the selectmen on the tax rate piece. We can do that. It's just going to be kind of not so transparent, so we'd have to be pretty, we might have to address that at some point in time, unless we're not going to do it in next year's budget. If we did it in the 18-19 school year, which at this point maybe that's what makes the most sense, but if we want to do it in next year's budget, starting July 1st, we need a contract in place, I think. Otherwise, we'd have to be pulling out of other things. So, but and we're getting $20,000 more, but we didn't put any money in the budget, but we can pull out of the maintenance fund for it. So if, I guess if John and
How quick can we get a contract?
it would be tough to do it in the next couple of weeks because we'd have to put it out to bid, I think, too, because it would be over $5,000.
So we have to put it out to bid.
So I guess at this point in time, we just have to hope that it's going to be pushed off into the 18-19 school year. And then it's easy to backdoor it in through the unreserved fund balance to the town, so we can get that one figured out. But if Jim and John think that we have to get it done for next year, then we should try to figure out how to do that pretty quickly. Actually, I guess we really don't, because we do have enough probably in the Whitney Reserve Fund to do it, so it probably really isn't that big a deal how it gets done. Entertain a motion to declare the equipment surplus and authorize disposal.
Moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Administrator reports.
Couple of things for you folks. One is Kent High School graduation went off very nicely on Saturday. Jackson, again, kudos to you with Nina Badger's salutatorian address was spot on. She did a very, very nice job, represented you folks very well. She also did a real nice job at the 8th grade Bartlett ceremony last week. So, you know, as Vicki said, your kids, you know, just in getting to connect with some of these kids at the high school level, they're dynamite. They do a tremendous amount of good at the school and contribute greatly to that.
Can I add one thing?
You may.
And if you didn't see it or know it, Logan Haggerty got the Key Cup, the Kennett Cup, so that's a community service all around board that we're really proud of. He may not live here now, but we know him. He was in 6th grade, so.
I think you folks have received this, but one of the pieces that I want, and this can go to the public as well, this is a reauthorization from the state. In 2000, the federal government had what was called No Child Left Behind, which was kind of the high stakes testing. That was how they measured it, and we've realized, the education world has realized that high stakes testing isn't always in the best interest of all students. So they've reauthorized what was called the ESSA Act, which is Every Student Succeeds Act. And this dovetails quite a bit with, and we talked about PACE as well. But really what it comes down to is more student-centered, personalized learning. And when we say that, you know, Smarter Balance, standardized tests serve a purpose, but they're usually an assessment of learning at that time. And what you'll start to hear more about with competency-based education is assessment for learning instead of learning. Those other tests, I like to say, are more of an autopsy after the event. You know, we do it in spring, we look at the results, maybe we'll make some global changes, but when we talk about PACE and performance assessments, those are more authentic for students. They allow students to demonstrate their learning in a few different ways. They're still statistically valid, they're reliable, and New Hampshire has really led the country with this. But they're given more frequently than just once a year. So a lot of the conversation that we heard tonight about student-centeredness, about developing the passion, giving kids a voice and choice in their learning, those are the pieces that really New Hampshire has allowed for local control to go back and say, okay, you know what, you want to do 6th grade very uniquely and specially, here are the standards, but how you get there are really those opportunities. And it's less about particular grade levels and more about, as we heard tonight, challenging students both, meeting them where they're at. And I think that's an important piece as we begin to move forward. I do recommend on the bottom of this sheet, there are a couple resources that I think are important, and they're looking for feedback from parents and school board members. There's a brief survey on there. It's only about 15 questions long. You don't have to be an educator to have all the pedagogy or the background information. I do recommend you go on there and provide feedback for people, and that is really important. Jackson is, your staff in your situation is unique in that we've applied to be a PACE level school, right? So those performance assessments. It doesn't mean that all standardized tests go away, because it's important to take a look at how your kids are doing on a national and international level. And Jackson is going to be enrolled in what's called Tier 2. Tier 3 is really just becoming familiar with the curriculum, becoming familiar with the standards and the competencies, and then getting started at that level. These folks are in a unique place where they're going to be a little bit further along. There are a couple schools in the district that are prepared and ready to do that. The Career and Technical Center at the high school has been dealing with competencies for 20 years. And so that's where they will be going, and that's where in August there's a group of educators going down, and they'll be continuing to work on that. But hopefully that allows them to free up those opportunities to say, here are the big picture, here are the big ideas with our curriculum, but allow for more freedom for the teachers to do what we heard tonight. So I do recommend that you take a look at these pieces and go on the website and find out a little bit more about that. The other piece is I gave, for those of you who aren't aware, the school board had a work session to start talking about goals, and I think that it was important. We took a look at the core values. They did a lot of nice work. We spent about 2 hours going through and looking at potential goals and indicators. The staff then, we did a workshop with them, work session, and then last Friday, they got together and put another 2 hours in taking a look. We have draft goals here, just these are kind of the minutes of our session. I'll give these to the staff and to the board. Please get back to me any edits or things that you felt like we potentially missed. I will offer to you, Mr. Cairns, give me a call, come on down to the office, and we can kind of get you up to speed with things.
That'd be great.
But from an outsider's view, I get to help facilitate that. I thought it was a collaborative approach between the staff and the board, and you put a lot of time and effort together. And I think that hopefully it takes care of any miscommunication, and I think, again, realizing the full potential of each and every student is at the forefront of everybody's. And then hearing from the public tonight, I think, was good feedback to go back and say, are there pieces that we're missing? So that is about all I have at this point. I did enjoy your sixth grade promotion. I know Gail, you probably talked about that, but Jackson is a unique and special place, and sitting there, and it's very nice. That's it.
Thanks, Fred. I would say that it was a very well-run meeting the other day, too. I think that both you and Katie have done a great job of putting together a lot of what we talk about and making it into a framework that makes sense and actually starts to move towards actual things happening. So you guys did a great job on that, and I do thank the staff and the school, and Gail for putting up with a difficult school board too sometimes. So, thank you.
You want to take a packet and pass it around? I'm handing out a packet and I'm going to talk about these items in order, so if you want to just keep them in order, it would make more sense. Keep them in order, So then there's an FYI item that's not on there yet. I just wanted to give you the name of the new media specialist that we're sharing with Bartlett. Her name is Jennifer Spofford. She'll be visiting us tomorrow because the teachers will be meeting to do some integrated curriculum work, and Melissa's going to bring her over and show her around the school and introduce her to the teachers. So that was not on the original list, but she'll be in the business.
She's currently in Bartlett, or she's a new?
She works at the high school right now as a paraprofessional,
Yeah.
completing her degree in
I didn't know if there were
library
two
science.
Jennifer Spoffords around. So I heard of that one, I didn't know one that was working at Bartlett, so she will be at Bartlett?
Yes, she'll be at Bartlett 4 days a week, and she'll be here on Tuesdays, the same schedule that Melissa had this year.
When you say media specialist, that's the librarian?
The librarian, yes.
Checking.
I think they're going back to librarian again, but we keep changing the title of that job.
And she was the assistant librarian at the high school also several years ago, so she has experience.
And a lot of energy, and she's
Yes.
really excited, so she'll be a great addition to our staffs, both of them, I think. So this is just an FYI item to let you know the teaching assignments for next year. You see there is a bit of a switch in the upper house. Ms. Heisler will take the 4-5, and Mr. Marshall will take the 6th grade next year. Any questions about that?
Are they okay with that?
Yes, yes they are. Are you okay with that? I had asked them before, because I said
Just given our conversation before, maybe you can tell us what are some reasons that you made those allocations of grades? Why did you switch it around? What's gonna
In
work well
looking
with
at
that?
their particular strengths and experience, John comes to us with many years of experience at the 6th grade level. There are some student needs and matches that were important in that decision as well.
It gives us an opportunity to know the curriculum from 4th all the way to 6th and how to best meet kids that way. You know, if we both have current experience with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, then we know the curriculum inside and out at all 3 grades.
And I think that's great
What comes after.
to swap back and forth. The one thing, I guess as a parent or as a school board member, the swapping back sometimes can bite you.
Because I know.
Yeah, like I had a child that had 3 years in a row, which isn't always horrible, but sometimes it can be, both for the teacher and the child.
We looked ahead, we thought about what we wanted to do. We, kind of looked at the configurations and the kids and, looked at the needs of the kids for the next 3 years and what that would look like.
And I was going to reserve this discussion, I guess, for board member issues under personnel, I guess, as far as maybe tasking the personnel committee with something, but one of my biggest concerns about and why I think 6th grade should be a standalone 6th grade has to do with curriculum mapping and where they line up with 7th grade. And if you're looping the curriculum for 6th graders because you're some years with 5th, some years not, how is it that you would align a 6th grade class that was doing curriculum from the year before with where they transition into 7th grade, particularly in math and science? I don't understand how that works. And it's what I've been concerned about from day one, and why the reasons for configurations have never made sense to me. We have multi-age, and I understand how it's difficult to do curriculum mapping from K through 6, but if you had consistent configurations from year to year, the curriculum mapping would make sense. You wouldn't get a gap in curriculum And I know there was a transition in curriculum a couple of years ago with fourth grade, particularly on American Revolution as an example. And I mean, my son never got American Revolution in grammar school here to any depth. He got right before it and right after it, but never really got American Revolution. And I know that was because of a switch from where it was taught in sixth grade to now it was taught in fourth grade. And I understand how that whole can happen, but I don't want that whole happening in sixth grade. And if you're going to align them, they should move from, their sixth grade year in Jackson should be the same sixth grade year that they get in Bartlett as far as the curriculum that they get. And I don't know how you do that if you loop the curriculum with fifth grade from some years you do it, some years you don't. I just don't understand how that works.
We spent about little more than 2 hours today looking at that. So first of all, so math is really easy. Math, given aside looking at how to make individual allocations for different kids' needs, we have the everyday math curriculum that we're following. That's separate for sixth grade. It's so the sixth graders, doesn't matter who else is in the room with them, they're having a concentrated period of time on everyday math. It's only sixth grade everyday math. It's the same sixth grade everyday math that every other sixth grader in the country who's doing everyday math gets. The science curriculum, when we looked at our science curriculum, we broke it out so that every year the sixth graders are doing, this is going to be really hard to explain. The sixth graders are doing
Joan, if we ought to do an evening where all of you get together and go over how the maps are developed, because we have the maps 2 or 3 years in advance, and then each year they tweak it a little bit to make it match. But it's a process that the K through 6 teachers go through in looking at, okay, here's the first grade, here's the second grade, here's the third grade. These are the kids that we name one particular child's year and see that they've gone through all 3 of the curriculums before they move to fourth grade and so forth.
But with the sixth grade science in particular, because it is a 6, I know you're thinking it's separated in next gen as 6 through 8. So I spent a great deal of time with Doriana and Katie and a couple of the sixth graders from Conway, and we broke out what's 6, what's 7, what's 8, so that every year our sixth graders are getting sixth grade science content. Now some of that, for example, last year we did the sixth grade chemistry stuff. We included some fifth graders in it because it was the changeover year. You know what I mean? So but now today when we sat down, we have, this is what the sixth graders are doing in physical science, life science, earth science.
And engineering.
And then the engineering and human impacts on science, or those categories. So that's sixth grade stuff is only sixth grade stuff that every year, it doesn't matter whether you're a standalone sixth grade or whether you're a 5-6, you're gonna get just science is only sixth grade curriculum. The math is only sixth grade curriculum. The language arts, there's the sixth grade, Lucy Calkins refers back to page something in the fifth grade one, and they just build upon it. That's the way that program works. And the units are really tight together. And the social studies topics, we straightened out some social studies topics so that there won't be gaps in the next 3-year social studies loop looking at fourth grade topics, fifth grade topics, sixth grade topics, and are waiting for some direction from the state. Kevin, do we know about social studies sample competencies?
They're coming.
Yeah.
They're coming.
And that's great information to have, and this is kind of what I mean by these are the kind of conversations that we kind of have to have a little bit more of. And just as some feedback to that, I get in a class of 7 to 14 kids how math can be easy to separate from level and ability. I have a really hard time understanding how you can separate science curriculums and literacy curriculums, particularly when it comes to social studies, and how much social studies is tied into literacy now, and the depth that they're going to get from that if all of those subjects are done in a classroom that has a 5, 6, and there's a big shift in 6th grade in those departments, and that's why, as a board member, and we've been emphasizing it. This is the 4th year now that we've sat here and said we really think it's important to have a standalone 6th grade. And those are the reasons that I see it, not because they deserve some super special 6th grade year. To me, that's what makes a super special 6th grade year. It's reaching a depth of the academics that allows them to do that by being separate. It doesn't mean that they're separate all the time. It doesn't mean that there aren't science programs that they can do with 4th, 5th, and kindergarten kids. It doesn't mean that they don't do reading regularly with 2nd and 3rd graders. It just means that if they're a separate standalone classroom, I would think that the teacher would have an easier time of reaching the depth of curriculum for science and literacy and social studies if it's a separate class. And if there's ways that you can compensate for those in other ways and you're doing it, that's great, but we should have the discussions that we know.
Yeah, that's part of the conversation.
If I can just piggyback on Jerry just for a second, talking about looping down to 4, 5, 6, and then, what Kristen said before is that, kids benefit from spending time with people of all ages and abilities and things like that. One thing, as a parent now, not as a school board member, of a child who will be 6th grade next year, I would love to see that go up as well, not just down. And I'm not saying our kids need to be with 7th and 8th graders, 9th graders. I'm just saying I would love to see, at least maybe have a discussion about it, these deeper, richer learning opportunities that some kids could have. Because we've had it this year where we've had people come and say, my kid needs more of an opportunity. How are you going to do that for them? Right? And so we know you're capable of that, and we want to support that. So that's why we were talking about the other day, what resources do you need? How can we do that? Because we think that we want to meet every kid where they are. We don't think, I'm sure we do all think our kids are snowflakes, but we try not to tell them that. We don't want to tell them they're special or gifted or anything like that, but we've had a number of advanced students who could use more of a challenge, and maybe we don't want to take them out of the social dynamic of 6th grade, but what can we do to give them that deeper learning?
We're hoping that some of that PACE training and stuff that we're moving towards the summer, I think a lot of that is going to lend itself to such individualized learning opportunities for kids. I think that's where we're kind of looking at whether and quite frankly, whether John's the 6th grade homeroom teacher or I'm the 6th grade homeroom teachers, there are going to be times where I'm spending time working with the 6th grade and John's working with the 4th and 5th grade. They're going to benefit from our different strengths in different topics and different things like that. There are so many different ways to look at it. I think that's part of the conversation we talked about on Friday, wanting to be able to have that conversation and really be able to explain it and map it out so it becomes clear to you, because I feel like what is pretty clear in my mind and fairly certain is pretty clear in John's mind too might not necessarily be clear in your mind, and so having so another guided conversation around that, I think that's what we talked about on Friday. I think we certainly looking forward to that conversation.
And I also think that I'm kind of speaking for the board here, but too, so, when people say about resources and what's needed in the classrooms, when we're given lots of different reasons, and even your configuration worksheet that you go off of, if there's social or behavioral issues that are dictating configurations, we're concerned about that, because social and behavioral issues should be able to be dealt with in ways that isn't by configuration. It's a concern that we have. And maybe those issues need to be discussed in ways with us as a board. Maybe we can go into non-public to discuss them. But if there's resources needed to compensate for those social needs or behavioral needs, we're willing to discuss those and consider those. If we need to hire a staff member in to deal with a social issue or a behavioral issue, we can do that. But we wouldn't have the ability to do that if we're not told. It's just, I would not like to see configurations based on social and behavioral needs. They need to be on academic needs. Scott?
In 40 minutes, I can speak again. Back to the curriculum based on this, just a little correction. Not next year, but the year after, Butler will have 3 villages, K2, 3, 5, and 6 through 8th. It's not because of cutting staff, it's because eventually the model in New Hampshire, maybe curriculum-wise, nationally would be to have 6, 7, 8. So, but as far as the curriculum standpoint, I'm sure Kim will agree that you walk around this building, we see out here on the walls, the same thing you see in Bartlett. So when you go 6th grade here, it's the exact same thing that they're in Bartlett and right down. You can see that. So they meet every week. The administrators meet every week, Wednesday morning for a couple hours, right?
Yep.
Drives me nuts,
Every
but they
Wednesday.
meet. They meet, and you know what? They're all on the same page as SU9 goes. But I just wanted to add in curriculum-wise, it's all SU9 developed. Now, when you get into the other stuff, I totally understand that, and you guys do an awesome job. You're so involved, it's great. I wish we could do more. That's it.
But I do think, to come back to what Joan said, from that meeting the other day, I really think that we all are pretty close to being on the same page. It really just comes down to having these kind of discussions, and sometimes they're painful and not fun and pleasant, but it does help to clarify.
Then maybe there's some happy mediums. It sounds like everybody wants 6th grade here, and sending 6th grade to Bartlett is gonna cost the town money. So maybe we can spend some money to make sure they stay here instead of the amount of money we need to send them there.
And that's something I think that the board's always willing to entertain. Is that, if we need to spend money to keep them here, let's do that. And maybe we don't. It's just, but let's be open to it. And, sorry, Gail. Move on to page 2 now.
Okay. A couple of meetings ago, we were given the SAU 9 report card, and there were a couple of questions about how our students did on Smarter Balanced when disaggregated out of that group. So these are just the scores for spring of 2015 and spring of 2016 in language arts and math on Smarter Balanced. So I don't have the other report card, but if you wanted to kind of compare or look at them, it does give you one indication that
These are the averages.
those are the numbers of students that are performing at 3 and above. I'm sorry, I didn't put that. That was detailed in the report, but who are proficient and or above.
It's a percentage.
It's a percentage, right.
And I would say these numbers will look great, and I would also caution that we have such low numbers that it doesn't take much to swing.
Right. Well, if you look at the 3rd grade, and then moving into the 4th grade, it looks like they went down in math. However, they're missing a student who moved. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things in a small population. One student can be a huge percentage of drop, so.
And I was going to just say that maybe they were cranky that day, but if they moved out entirely, that makes it almost impossible to have it.
So that is one of the things that makes it hard about reporting our data, that it is influenced by.
Jerry, I hate to, I'm not setting a precedent, but I really do have to for part, so.
Andy, you can do anything. Do the vote on that.
Motion.
Thanks, Andy.
Well, August 21st looks great, so.
You'll be back from Bangladesh by then?
No. Not leaving the, well, I'm going to Canada, so not leaving the country.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank
It's
you.
good to be back.
Welcome back.
If you have any questions, please go holler down there, stop by.
You can come back for coffee cake.
Free
coffee cake.
What about us?
You're not on the board.
I'll move up here.
I was thinking about it.
So the last piece, in a meeting, I believe, with Jerry and Keith, you had some questions about the World Language Program and suggested that I would want to go back and ask my faculty what they felt about it thinking about whether there should be more hours or less hours, and how was that done. So I did in fact ask all of the faculty to give me some feedback about, they had 4 questions about how they would envision our language program. How do they feel it's working now? How would they envision it in the future? How do they feel about specific languages? And I got some good feedback back from them. And then I also did a little bit of research myself in looking at what different schools are offering. There was a very large report about world languages across the nation, which was really interesting to read. World language at the elementary level is pretty stagnant and in fact declining in many schools because of financial reasons. If somebody has to cut a program, world language is one of the first ones to go. So I chewed all of that up and decided that I would give you my recommendation, seeing as we need to hire a teacher now to continue, because we had a long-term sub to replace Alyssa. So based on the results, I would recommend that for at least for next year, since we budgeted for the program to continue as it is, which is known as a FLEX or Foreign Language Exposure experience, which I've detailed for you on the attachment, so you can look at exactly what that means. And in the interest of time, I won't go over all of that, but it's basically a sampling of language experience, so the child's ear and brain is ready to hear and speak another language. The goals are not for conversational language, they're mainly just for understanding, getting a taste of the culture, and letting the synapses in the brain at a young age become familiar with what it would sound like and following instructions. There's a place on here that refers to total physical response, which is what she would use in terms of giving them directions in another language and having the kids show the blue or the yellow or whatever, or respond to the commands in the language with very little expectation that they would actually speak the language. So for this year, I would recommend we move forward with that. And then since we're having these forums where we're communicating and talking with one another, there's another type of full elementary school language program, which would require 4 hours a day, for a staff person to work 4 hours, 3 days a week. The recommended amount of language instruction for a child to really come out of elementary school speaking conversationally is 90 minutes 3 times a week. So we had not budgeted for that, but that's a conversation that we can have about whether this community and this board want to...
90 minutes, is this not too long for like a 4th or 5th grader to sit through?
I mean 90 minutes a week.
Oh, I thought you said
I'm sorry, you're
90.
right, I did say it that way, but I was mistaken. It's 30 minutes, 3 days a week, for a total of 90
Total of 90
minutes a
minutes
week. Right, I misspoke, I'm glad you called me on that one.
I love this idea.
Yeah.
You know, I
Can we get
definitely- and I
this
thank you
with
for
for that
doing
plan
this.
too? Do you have anything?
A definition of that? Sure, I can
Yeah.
put one together for you, yeah.
Oh, you did that? I thought you grabbed that from somewhere.
No, she.
I actually cut and pasted it from a number of
Okay.
different places to describe the program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Next year's good in the summer.
Thank you for doing this. This is,
That's fantastic.
I think it's great.
And then in terms of the hiring of the person, there was no clear recommendation. A lot of people think that Spanish is the best language or that Mandarin is the best. Mandarin is one of the smallest or smaller languages taught in schools across the country. Spanish is the #1 language that's taught in schools across the country because it's very useful in our United States due to the immigrant population and a lot of Spanish-speaking people. However, French is the bigger language for business people because that are going overseas. And then, of course, Mandarin is up and coming if you assume we're doing lots of business with China. So we could go any route, but my preference and the preference of the staff is still to hire that individual, preferably with French or Spanish, that is a good fit, a wonderful educator, and a good fit with our school and our faculty. So that's the recommendation for how I'm going to advertise for a person.
Based on students, I know that they would prefer to put the continuity.
If we did the flex, I think French, if you go to the next one, then maybe it's worth considering.
Well, I know what happened with your children is that we had French, and then the next educator was Spanish. And so they switched languages midstream, and that was tricky for the kids.
But then they're also looking into 7th and 8th grade, and then they're like, well, I know Spanish, which is useless because it's French that's in 7th and 8th grade, so there's looking at their whole, just putting it out there.
Spanish available back in
Back in
in
high
high
school.
school.
In high school, it is, yes. Yeah.
And the idea isn't that they're going to be learning to speak a language
Right.
for everyday use. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. I mean, it's really the idea of what's being said here is the exposure to it and what that does.
Right. And there were a number of reasons listed there from the research as to why learning any language is beneficial for students.
Teach music, right.
Yeah, like music.
Cool, thank you, Gail.
You're welcome.
Back to citizen comments. Any?
It hasn't been 40 minutes.
I don't live here.
This could be the last board meeting for like a month and a half.
I just applaud, this is so educational. You guys deal with education, you deal with students, you get things done. I applaud you all for that. I think it's awesome.
Can I,
So you came.
is there, what, I guess I'm interested a little bit on the world language question. What, how are you going to decide whether it is Spanish or French, and is it based on, yeah, how are you going to decide that?
What we did originally was we looked for a world language teacher and picked the educator that we felt was a great fit. Hopefully, as they said, if somebody comes and they're really wonderful and they speak Spanish, that's all the better. If we get a group of candidates though, and there's not a suitable candidate that speaks Spanish, however, there's a wonderful candidate that does French, we'll consider moving to. So it's not really about the language for us, it's more about the educator and the person that's coming.
So I think, yeah, the staff has gotten very creative in how to integrate that into the everyday classrooms. And I think that's probably what you look at, is that integration is the best fit. And if that's a Spanish teacher, then they'll probably do Spanish, or that person's strongest in Spanish, then they'll probably do Spanish. If that person's strongest in French, they'll probably do French. If that person's strongest in Mandarin, maybe they'll even consider Mandarin, I don't know. But I think that it's the integration piece that
That's the
probably.
key. If you can get somebody who can inspire the kids, get them excited. That's why the German program was so strong at the high school. It wasn't because kids
Awesome
love
teacher.
German.
He's an
Several outstanding educators that inspired the kids to continue, especially at this age.
You know, 'cause in the years that I've come through here, I've always thought, geez, why aren't we doing Spanish? It makes more sense because that's what most people are speaking. But I don't think we want to put them in that box and say, this is the way you should do that. I think it really needs to be more of, let them be creative in how they manage that. And it seems to work pretty well.
And one advantage for 2 years of language, and it's French right now in Bartlett, is all the Jackson and Bartlett kids go into the high school with a language credit already. And I really don't believe if they're focusing on Spanish here and then switch to French, it is to any disadvantage whatsoever. I think learning the understanding of how languages work is the most important thing.
So we have the same conversation.
Do you all still have students taking Spanish outside of the school?
Anyone can take anything outside of school.
Well, I mean, through RELAX that.
Yes, we, this year I don't think we had anyone, but last year we had 2 students doing Spanish last year on VLAX. This year we have 1 student doing math.
Doing math on
On VLAX, yeah.
And two.
Oh, that's right.
Well, 2 separate.
Right.
Okay.
I'm a big supporter of the language experience, and we've seen it be just great in our home. And I'm just curious to learn more about how I should be thinking about it. I understand from the group that this is to be thought of more as an experiential situation than actually acquiring language skills. And so I wonder, are there other experiential type learning experiences that we are prioritizing lower in the budget process than the language program? In other words, are we sacrificing other kinds of teachers or other kinds of programs in order to have a language teacher, or do we have all of those curriculum pieces already in place that we would want?
You're pretty well supported.
Yeah, I don't think that we're lacking anything. We have a longer school day than most of the other ones as well, and I think the school's done an outstanding job of making sure that we're meeting all of our testing goals and all that, as well as getting extra on the outside, other things.
But I also think that's why we're engaged
Yeah.
in this conversation about individual learning plans, and that because we don't want to miss opportunities. So yeah, I think that, we're all very conscious, particularly, and the staff is, it's always on their mind, I think. And the language piece happened to develop into the program from a school board member probably 5 or 6 school boards ago. That was really adamant about getting a language program in the school, and that's how we came up with it. And it really becomes, it's a prioritizing issue. It's not a budget issue, because the staff here has always been very, very creative in how to integrate something, enrichment programs into the budget without really even affecting the budget at all. So it's never a budget issue as much as it is a priority issue.
Great.
Thank you. It's helpful to understand that it is really about exposure, because I think with a position that is this amount of time, similar to the amazing Mr. Cooney, that we might lose teachers because it is a smaller amount of time that they're committing to us. And so it's really helpful to understand that it is about exposure, not about necessarily gaining fluency.
And if you know a PE teacher that teaches Spanish,
this is off topic. Oh, I guess it's open topic. I can ask this question. How is it decided what teachers are allowed accommodations financially to have their kids come to Jackson and what teachers aren't? And so in recruiting for a gym teacher and a world language teacher, is that a position that has the option of having their student come to our school?
There's a policy.
yeah, the policy is for full-time
Full-time.
staff. Full-time staff are able to have the reduced tuition rate. We have not had a part-time staff member make a request for anyone to look at it.
That seems like a little bit of a tough spot to put on the onus on the staff member to do that.
And I think that's a great point to raise, because the primary reason that we do that is because we're trying to retain the staff that we have. That's probably the biggest reason why we offer that. And if retaining staff is an issue with part-time staff, it's certainly something that we probably should consider.
Yeah, everything's open to discussion. So if somebody said this would make my life easier,
I think we should again add is that we should have a policy.
We
rather
should
than-
discuss it.
Take a look at the policy.
Rather
Can we put it
than,
on the agenda,
yeah.
on the policy, review the policy, and figure it out?
Thanks.
Is there a sense, in your experience with recruiting, would that be attractive to candidates, do you believe?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That would be great.
Oh, good.
Emily?
I just wanted to share that I'll be doing a presentation, Bedrock, the Children of the Granite State, over at the Jackson Community Church, a week from Thursday, so June 29th from 5 to 7. This is sort of the ongoing community outreach on the importance of having all families be able to access early childhood and why the brain science and everything behind early childhood and the role that plays in future lifelong outcomes. So come on over, 5. Actually, won't even go that long. I can talk forever on that, but
Will there be food?
yes. Needs to be done. I believe it's just before the soup supper. So I don't know what other conversation about early childhood programming has happened tonight. I apologize for being late.
And will you have childcare available?
You,
Not for me, but in general, for
that,
that event. If a parent wants to go, but they don't have childcare because they have early childhood needs. Do you guys offer that for your talk?
we have not done it all the time.
Okay.
And I wonder,
But-
it sounds like a really interesting thing to attend as
Uh-huh.
a parent of a young child.
It's a horrible time of
It's
night,
a
isn't it?
horrible time of night.
So tell me where, when, it'd be a great time of night, with childcare, with dinner. This is, we're hitting all
Yeah.
community groups. So this is the church. Let's sign you up. Let's get you in there. So,
The other
So,
thing
yeah,
that
I-
comes to mind is maybe on some of the library events, because there's such a robust group right now. There were 16 kids at the Jackson Library story time, at 10:30 on a Thursday, like a month ago. So either piggybacking around story time.
So can you send me all that information?
I will.
You contact me, that'd be great. Thank you.
That's really a big group.
Yeah, any kind of groups. We've got 6 people trained in providing this, this information to folks. So we're just sort of fanning out across the community. I'm up at midnight, I'll do it at midnight. All your kids are asleep. It won't be this like that.
We can always hold a talk at the local deli store down there too.
Yeah, I mean,
Time slot that's not gonna work.
any groups that are looking for an event to have, information to share.
Real estate agents?
What-
Everybody with that? Real estate agents?
What's that?
Real estate agents?
Real estate agents? I would love to meet with the real estate agents, yeah.
There's a board in town, you can go.
Yeah, tell me what.
Chamber of Commerce.
The chamber. Yep, we did a presentation at the Business to Business Expo. Unfortunately, everyone who drank the Kool-Aid attended, so.
Emily, thank you. Beth?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the point that you made about your concerns about configuration and whether the priority, I don't know if the school's thinking that the priority is, the education of the specific group of children or the social and behavioral aspects of it. And I really would like to stress that I think that the academics are just so important in the 6th grade, and that, them being separated, and it doesn't have to be that they're special. It has to be that they're meeting their basic needs of education. And if there are other needs that are social or behavioral that are going on, that, like you said, should be addressed separately. But I really think a teacher to the group of students is just so important. And, and if there needs to be an aide brought in, then maybe that should be addressed. But, I just feel like we missed a lot of opportunities this year with the 6th grade, and if that's because of the social and behavioral issue in the 4th grade, I'm a little upset. I just don't think that was a fair way to deal with the school or the class. So.
Thanks, Beth. Any more comments? We'll move on to board member issues. Just to update on the, thanks again.
JP's gonna be on Chronicle next Friday.
Really?
Next Friday? The 30th? Yeah, 7 o'clock. Well, Emily got to tell.
Just to update, Keith and I got together with Gail and Kevin to go over the principal's contract. It's basically Kevin and Gail's hands now. They're developing a couple of different contracts for us to look at. Kind of premature to kind of go into the details of it, other than it's in their hands. It wasn't supposed to be ready by this meeting or anything, so it's in the works. And when it's there, we'll probably get together with them again to review it, and then we'll bring it to the full board when it's ready.
Do we have a date by which we need to make a decision on that?
No, just, it would be budget time. I mean, so my timeline would be to meet with the personnel committee, which is these 2 folks, sometime this summer. And then hopefully, if it takes more than one time, but to bring a draft at the August 21st meeting, I think would be appropriate for feedback.
Great.
So we'll take a look at what they put together, and then we'll probably come up with something to recommend to the boards. We'll be looking at.
Okay.
Great.
A small board member issue. I had 4 people express concern and disappointment that there wasn't childcare tonight because they wanted to come. So I don't know why that's fallen by the wayside, but there were people that would have come that didn't. So if there's a way to do that, maybe think about it.
I think we sometimes take advantage of the PTO because they're usually here on Monday nights when we have our meetings.
Right,
and
and they've
offer that
always,
for us, and-
they're the ones who've arranged for the childcare, not the school, really, the PTO has done that, and when the PTO pays that person, so
Well, I mean, well, if we can figure out whose responsibility it would be, I mean, I'm happy to help sort that out if we need to.
I think that's a great point,
Yeah, we
because,
could try that.
you know,
moving forward.
our regular meetings and agendas are our meetings and agendas, but if we're inviting the community to come to share things with us, it might be creative for us to think about ways to.
So you're talking about at our regular meetings, not just the listening?
No, it's just saying that
No,
our regular
the next
meetings, we
listening
wouldn't,
post.
I don't think we'd be doing that, because our regular meetings are, you know, we conduct business, and that's what we want to do, and we welcome the community, and hopefully like to have input. Obviously, ours would probably get more than any other boards in New Hampshire, probably, but, I think for listening posts, particularly if it's age-related, like if we're gonna have a preschool listening post or public hearing, maybe we should try to figure out how to have childcare so that we get more participation, because that's really kind of why we have them, so. I think this one is well attended at the time of year, and.
Right,
Next meeting, August 21st, 6 PM. And we already.
So far away, I couldn't even comment on it.
Closer than you think, kids are getting shorter. Be skiing soon.
Days are actually still getting longer, Scott, for a few more days.
23rd.
Morning.
I always look forward.
Like, did it get shipped out?
Yeah, probably get drafted.
I thought it was at 8 p.m. and
I
gone.
gotta sign the manifest, someone's gonna sign the manifest, and I got contracts to sign.
You both need to sign?
Do we need to?
I don't think we need to vote on any of those things, so.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I think we're,
Very good.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Nice
Thank
speech
you.
by Gary.